Hey there, and welcome back to another Miraculous Ladybug Season 6 review. And today we're going to be talking about the latest episode to drop, episode 14, Grand Diaper. Now, at first I thought this was going to be some weird translation or something like that, but no, it is exactly what it says on the tin. A big villain with a big old diaper on. Miraculous never change. So this is, as we said, episode 14, but seeing as it deals with the origin of a vigilante that was first seen during Sleeping Siren, which was episode 6, it's pretty clear this is one of those episodes that's playing fast and loose with chronological order. I think this episode might actually be the earliest episode of the season, at least when it begins. I think it goes over the course of a couple of weeks beyond this point though. It's a Zoey-focused episode today, continuing her story arc, which is nice to see, and setting up a lot of big future plans for her as well. It was perhaps a bit of a quieter episode on the main overarching plotline with Lila and the Miraculouses, and really with both Ladybug and Cat Noir. I found this to be rather rare, because usually in these sorts of episodes, they're juggling both the minor characters they're trying to elevate alongside a story for the leads. The fact that they don't really do this here in favour of it being a mostly Zoey-focused episode suggests they're really doing the work to elevate her to the level of being one of the big heroes, a cut above the rest so to speak, and trying to bring her into prominence as one of the core group. They're probably trying to bring her up to the level of an Alia or Felix or Kagami, where they're clearly a cut above the lesser heroes but are firmly below Cat Noir, who in turn is firmly below Ladybug. Then there's also Alex, who's a huge name, but that's because for her character to appear, something big needs to be going down already, doesn't it? Anyway, with all that being said, time to jump right into the episode. We start off the episode with another showcase of how one of the Miraculous got their new look/design, with Zoey trying on her new outfit with Pollen in preparation for their first day at school. I do have to say, I love how supportive Pollen is, almost to the point of being a sycophant. Probably the most adorable Kwame we've seen yet. Zoey ditches the beanie and heads downstairs, where it's revealed that it seems that Andre's bought the local cinema, and now he lives upstairs with Zoey. Okay, so yeah, we already knew that she was going to live with Andre, but at the same time, it really is just wild to me that both of her biological parents decided it was all good, that she just lives with this man she's only known for a couple of months at best. I'm pretty sure it was heavily implied that they had never met before season 4, so it is very crazy. Also, they're not going to make me forget how much of a terrible enabler Andre was, even if they clearly want you to. Back to the episode, with his wealth from the hotel, I guess they've bought the cinema now and they showcase art house films. I don't know what the market in Paris is like for an art house cinema, but I presume that with a location like this, there's a very good chance of it being very successful. Andre's feeling a bit nervous about opening the cinema because he thinks his selection's too obscure and out there and that nobody would actually want to come to cinemas anymore because the internet has a wealth of content to enjoy. However, Zoey gives him a pep talk about how they've built this together and how you don't become successful simply by copying what everybody else is doing. You have to be genuine and follow your own vision to succeed. And I'm not really sure if that's applicable advice in every context or career, but in terms of cinema ownership, it probably is. This dude clearly has a type of film that he likes, and by showcasing those instead of the big names, you can draw a crowd, especially since a lot of the big chains might not show the types of films that Andre wants to. After a wholesome hug, Zoey goes off to school and meets up with her friends, who all compliment her new look, and considering her prior feelings for Marinette, I'm sure her words in particular made her feel a certain way. Just as an aside, when Alia asks whether she went to New York or Hollywood, referencing that Zoey's looking like a movie star, they have Zoey say New York in an American accent just out of the blue. This was actually really awesome because she is bilingual, and so slipping into her American English would make a lot of sense and adds a lot to her character if you ask me. It happens a couple of times throughout the episode, and every single time it happened it took me by surprise, but in a good way. It just felt like very thoughtful and intelligent writing to give her a couple of moments like this, to the point that I hope it isn't a one and done and they keep on going with this sort of thing for her character, because I do think it helps her stand out and she needs that. I actually think it would make a lot of sense to see this happen for a bunch of other characters, such as Felix, who is meant to be English, right? I just think it would be a cool way to help them build up a bit of personality and help them stand out, although in comparison to Zoey, it's not like Felix needs all that much help to stand out. He's already a pretty well-defined and iconic character, famous for featuring very heavily in a lot of important episodes. Whenever Felix has a proper featured role in an episode, you know that something big's going to be revealed, even if he takes a back seat like in Yuxie Gozen. Zoey tells her friends that she and Andre have fixed up the cinema, and they all have this big group hug. Damn, so did they just not hang out at all over summer break? I get that some people go on vacation and whatnot, but at the same time, summer break's fairly long, and we know that Marinette at the very least was around, seeing as she was there during the Tokyo special. I guess that Zoey was just really busy helping Andre out at the cinema getting ready for the big debut. This wholesome group hug is of course spoiled by the arrival of local idiot Kim, who rushes over to tell Zoey that there's another American at their school and that she has to come and meet him. This is where we get the chronological debut of Ray, who's an old friend turned enemy of Zoey's from New York City. I'm actually surprised with this because I got the impression that she didn't know that Ray was around until she first speaks to him during the events of Daddy Cop right at the end of the episode, right? I guess not. We go into the intro theme, and when we return, it's after a little bit of a time skip. The prologue cold open was all set during the first day of school, but now we've jumped forward and are over to after the events of the Daddy Cop ending, where Sabrina's changed up her look, and it really doesn't look anywhere near as good as it did before. Chloe apparently agrees with this because she's shit-talking her on social media, laughing about her new appearance. However, we continue the wholesome vibes the episode's laying down, with a big compilation of all her friends coming in to save the day, taking selfies with her and posting them up on social media. I think we also just need to take a sidetrack for a second and talk about this site that they all use now. Is it called Zoo? It seems that as part of its branding, it's openly using the different animal themes of the various different Miraculous heroes, and don't get me wrong, nothing wrong with that. The only real issue that I have is that all of our heroes seem to use it, and they don't have the intelligence to not use their specific symbol for their profile. Good lord, why would you risk it just for that, you know what I mean? I suppose they are teens, but they're very much playing fast and loose with the idea of being a secret society of heroes. This opening 3 minutes is so full of wholesome vibes that it lulls you into a false sense of security and then blasts you with all the injustice in the world. I have to say that the build up to all the drama within the episode itself is so good because it feels relatable and lets you really empathize with Zoey, because I think pretty much everybody has encountered the types of douchebags that can do whatever they want with no consequence. Am I alone in having regular daydreams of bad people who avoid justice from the system and can get away with everything, running into the likes of Batman in a dark alleyway who makes them reevaluate their whole life and eat through a straw for the next couple of weeks? Is it really just me that has those types of fantasies? Am I a broken person? I don't think so, to tell you the truth, and I think the episode plays on that desire to see bad people facing karma for their actions, and thus poses a lot of pretty interesting and complex moral questions. I do feel that the writing for the show just continues to get more and more intriguing, but I think it shows that the new direction is no longer a fluky couple of episodes, but a genuine step up in the quality of the creative. Of course, now it's time for us to get pissed off by the montage of Ray and the boys being absolute dickheads. Here is their list of moments. Well, prior to this, we saw in other episodes they'd bully the shit out of Aglaé when they'd only just met her, and they also went out of their way to try to sabotage the relationship of Kim and Ondine. Here though, we see Ray bump into Zoey, which makes her drop her phone, before they openly litter and laugh at Nino when he tells them to pick it up, saying they're creating work for the cleaners by littering. They go on to barge into an elevator ahead of Sublime, meaning she's going to have to wait for them to go up and for it to come back down to be able to head upstairs because she's in her wheelchair. When Ray realizes that he forgot a textbook, he has one of his goons, the crazy, aggressive looking one, Loic I think his name is, bully Sabrina into handing over hers, forcing her to share with Zoey. In their cooking class, when Marinette leaves her workstation to go get some ribbons for a box in which she's put a tart for Adrian, Nelson, one of the other bullies, tells the aggressive one to write a nasty note and hide it under the tart. Something I have to say that I like about the writing for the bullies is that there's a clear hierarchy between them all. Ray's in charge, and thus he doesn't get his hands dirty and delegates to Nelson, who in turn delegates to Loic, who's the one we see doing most of the pranks this episode. I also have to say that these three are douchebags on a whole new level, just going after anybody, even if they don't know who they are. I love it because it actually makes you hate them so much, and it's clear that they've learned their lesson in the writing. They don't want to have a situation like with Chloe where they added so much nuance that people began to really like her, and thus were angry when she started to be presented as an out-and-out villain once more. Here they're not wasting time, and they're just going full asshole with all three of these characters, and it's working so well at getting me nice and heated. Zoey tries to stand up to them at first, but is quickly shouted down by Ray, who has blackmail material that he's holding over her head about what she was like in New York City. I think it's pretty obvious, based on this dialogue, plus what he said during Daddy Cop, as well as her own words of hiding who she was when she was first introduced, and her ability to slip into bully mode to try to impress Chloe, that she was the original Nelson. A sycophant who would follow Ray around and be a bully alongside him because she wanted to be his friend, and when she could no longer keep pretending, he turned against her. The only issue, of course, being that he still has the proof of what she was like, and so she's worried that her friends will no longer want to be her friends if they knew the truth. Of course, we all know, simply from the interactions and dynamics within the Miraculous, that this would not be the case, but she has no real way to know this, so it makes a lot of sense. She doesn't intervene when Adrian begins to read the message, but it all turns out fine because Adrian knows Marinette so well that he knows for a fact she would never write something like this. On top of that, you'd have to assume that What's-His-Face wouldn't have good handwriting, and yes, I realize I'm generalizing based on his outward appearance, but you know it's true. Despite the fact that Zoey's feeling like she's unable to take a stand against the bullies, I do like that she doesn't just give up or jump straight into being a vigilante intimidating them. She does try to do things the right way by giving Mr. Damocles an anonymous tip with all their wrongdoings. Granted, trusting Mr. Damocles to stand up to rich authority figures and schoolyard bullies is akin to trying to fix a severed limb using a band-aid, but hey, I guess it's the thought that counts. She tried to operate within the system itself before she took any other action whatsoever, so I think this is good progression within the writing, and it feels consistent to her character and the flow of the narrative. He doesn't rush things. Over in Damocles' office, he tells the boys that he's going to be forced to call in the parents to get to the bottom of this, but Ray tells him he's already called his dad, and then he bursts into the room, scoffs at the rap sheet, and thinks that it's a promising start for his son, before telling Damocles to cut down the tree in the middle of the school because it prevented him landing his chopper. Instead, he had to do so outside, which feels illegal in so many different ways, but of course, since he's mega rich, which he'll face no consequence. Zoey witnesses them walking out and is all shocked to see Ray's dad, which in turn got the gears turning in my mind. I know that it's not true, but it'd be so funny if they jump the gun yet again and have this guy turn out to be yet another half-sibling or something. I doubt it would be the case, but it would be funny, and they do have similar hair colors and eyes, don't they? That crack theory aside, I do think this is pretty clear that this guy's a prime candidate to be part of that secret society, the Kingdom, and from now on, whenever there's a rich asshole person introduced in the show, it should be a fair bet that they're part of it too. We already know that Tomoy's the machine, Natalie's dad's the weed, and the new half-sibling of Zoey is the diamond, whilst Audrey's seemingly a member too, but we don't know what symbol she is or if she's just an assistant like Natalie is with no actual symbol for her name. Based on her personality though, I doubt she's just a lackey, and so she's likely a full member, and now we have this guy. What symbols could they be though? Do you guys have any ideas? Because I don't really. Feeling completely defeated, Zoey starts crying, and this is where Marinette stumbles across her. Marinette gives her the Marinette Special, which is essentially a wholesome pep talk about banding together with the people you love to stop bullies and trying to set a better example. She gives her a hug and it's all very beautiful, and I have to say that Marinette is well and truly in her prime at the moment in terms of my personal appreciation of this character. I know she's not always been the most popular character with the online fan base, but I have to say that now she's with Adrian and we've been able to dial back on the cringe, her character's so much more enjoyable to watch as the main protagonist. I get that there are those out there pissed off about all the lying she's doing, but I don't know. I kind of think you're supposed to see it from both sides, and the writing does take that into account. It's not a completely black and white issue that we're dealing with here, but we'll talk about that another time and move on with the episode. The pep talk only lasts so long though, because whilst Marinette has a very idealistic view on the world, Zoey keeps encountering the worst sort of people who do what they want with no consequence. We start off with this little prick who thinks it's funny to blast music right in the face of what seems to be a baby who is in the infant stage of their life, and so is very fragile and sensitive. This dude is very lucky he lives in a TV version of Paris, because I suspect that despite more and more people becoming bystanders in real life, that if somebody was harassing a little baby, they'd cop a beating and end up on one of those instant justice compilations you see online, and it'd be well deserved. And if my blood pressure wasn't high enough simply from that scene, next up after Sabrina gets off, the tram driver intentionally leaves the stop despite being able to see somebody coming with a bald kid in a wheelchair calling out for him to wait. And obviously this kid's supposed to be battling cancer, and this guy drives off like a supreme douche. I do have to tell you that whilst the episode's trying to preach the message that you're supposed to rise above and be better than these types of people and not stoop to their level, I do find myself personally gravitating towards the Zoey perspective more than the Marinette one. I realize that's probably my own personal moral failing, but they're already vigilantes to begin with, so why not use Batman tactics on these clowns? Zoey doesn't even go so far as all that, so I do think the message is somewhat poorly broadcast across the episode in this way, but we'll talk more on that when we get there. Continuing on that theme, the tram passes by a shoot for the latest XY music video, which involves Bob Roth preventing some little old lady with a walking frame being able to go inside her building and go home, before Zoey arrives back home to find some random thugs threatening Andre to give them a refund on the tickets to a musical because they didn't like it. They even promise that they're going to make a scene and scare off other customers if he refuses them. Thus, he gives them a month of free cinema as well as free popcorn and drinks. Whilst we're supposed to view this as an equal injustice to the other things we've seen over the course of the episode, I still have minimal pity for Andre as a whole because he has been the dickhead throwing his weight around in these types of situations many times before. Even before Audrey came back into the story. What goes around comes around is my perspective on this sort of interaction. Zoey, of course, does not share my view on Andre, and she doesn't like seeing her dad be bullied. And so this, combined with all the bullshit she's seen over the course of the afternoon, as well as the stuff that Ray's been pulling, gets her ready to power up into a hero persona, despite Pollen hinting that this is probably not the best way to use her powers. She suits up, and what do you know? She's the dark vigilante from Sleeping Siren, as if there was any doubt about that to begin with. She doesn't end up laying down some justice in this scene, and she goes back to her room to think about things, with Pollen explaining that her dark suit is a reflection of her mental state. This leads to her calling Ladybug to ask for some advice, because she wasn't quite willing to take that first step just yet, and she needs somebody to talk to. Ladybug turns up and finds Zoey in her Vesperia costume and asks her what's wrong. Vesperia asks her whether they're allowed to step in to stop people from doing evil things, and Ladybug tells her that it's both her right and her duty to stop people from causing harm. Zoey then takes it a step further and poses the moral question. How do you stop people from doing wrong in the first place? Is that possible? Ladybug thinks that it isn't, but all they can do is defend Paris and try to educate those who have done wrong. Obviously, for a lot of people, the idea of educating pieces of shit to not be horrible people is not something they want to have to do. Thus, Zoey goes to the Batman school of thought of punishing perpetrators rather harshly. I think that Bob Roth probably gets it the worst. She venoms him and takes him up to the top of the Eiffel Tower. I do find it clever how they make it seem like she has super speed when in actuality, she's simply paralyzing these people and then waking them up elsewhere. Obviously, she's probably moving super fast regardless, but you know what I mean. I just think it's pretty clever. We cut over to the three bullies who are in the midst of a high-speed river chase with the cops chasing them down, and I really cannot wait for these guys to face some significant consequences one day. They really are the worst, and they even chuck bubble bath liquid into the sand, which somehow bubbles up enough to hit Roger in the face. Oh, poor old Roger, quite literally never gets any respect in this show and gets battered by villains and now local school bullies. I think it's perhaps time for him to look into a career change if this kind of thing keeps happening to him. The bullies get venomed and carried off to a roller coaster, strapped in and sent flying, although I can't help but feel that they deserved even worse than this. They are truly terrible people with no hope of redemption. The three thugs that were harassing Andre are tracked down and attacked as they're intimidating a pizza delivery guy to hand over the food, and so Zoey snatches them and forces them to sit through a musical in the cinema whilst being strapped down, so there's no escape possible. That's really not that bad though. To be honest, like I said, for most of these people, she's not doing much that's morally reprehensible. Well, there is the Bob Roth one, which probably could have killed him, but then the others not so much, until we get to the one where she abducts the tram driver whilst he's driving the tram with one of her friends inside. Could this not have been extremely dangerous and led to some sort of collision on the road? Hell, did she stop the speedboat those boys were driving? I hope so. Good golly. Max starts to panic seeing all the chaos, and so he calls in some backup in the form of Ladybug and Cat Noir before they get additional calls from some other members of the team, with Ali having found the tram driver at the zoo being scared by a panther, while Sabrina found the bullies at the theme park. Here is where we finally meet the title character, who has a pretty funny design. I'm not gonna lie, it's like Transformers meets Rugrats, and it's utterly ridiculous in the best of ways. This guy isn't playing around either. He's after Zoey, and he's willing to be extra violent to find her, doing things like hurling a Ferris wheel with people inside it across the city, and picking up cars and shaking them like a toddler with a rattle. I do find a certain enjoyment out of this dude being jealous of his new baby brother or sister, can't quite recall which, and yet behaving about as mature as they are. We get into some action, and I have to say that once again, it's really good overall, and I really love how the different heroes are able to combine techniques to fight together and win. It's just a step above Season 5. Here we see Pegasus use a portal to slam one of Big Baby's rattle rockets into the side of his head, with Ladybug then tripping him up using the yo-yo, before they all get blasted back by him using some sort of sonic scream. They come at him again, and Cat Noir and Ladybug provide some distraction to try to allow Miss Hound to steal the phone where they think the Ultra Kuma is hidden, only for Ladybug to get caught, requiring Cat Noir to jump in to save her by cataclysming the ground, causing the big fella to fall and lose his grip. I'm really enjoying the fact that these fights are no longer the Ladybug show, because when you have that feeling that anything can happen, it makes it all the more enjoyable and diverse. She can still be the lead character and the main protagonist without winning everything on her own. With the big guy stuck in the ground, Pegasus opens a fresh portal right in front of him, whilst Miss Hound uses her power to retrieve the phone, with Cat Noir then destroying it. But it turns out that this isn't where the Ultra Kuma was, and so Big Baby's able to get back up and start smashing again, with Pegasus becoming the episode MVP by preventing an absurd amount of collateral damage with his portals. Meanwhile, the rest of the team stay back whilst Ladybug fixes the phone, which shows that the villain is the akumatized baby tormentor, who was akumatized when he filmed himself cutting up his new baby sister's diapers, after which Zoey burst in, snatched him, and set him up in the middle of Paris with a pacifier and diaper. I have to say that in my eyes, he deserves this public shaming. I'm certainly not going to shed a tear that this guy was humiliated. The heroes briefly discuss things, and Ladybug makes it clear that she disapproves of this vigilante, and they all decide they're going to need some help because the object seemingly inside the big suit of armor he's wearing, so they call in Vesperia. The heroes arrive just in time to witness Max the Chad stop a mass casualty event where Grand Diaper throws the Eiffel Tower, forcing Pegasus to use his portals once more to save the day, before Vesperia arrives and they all team up to very quickly subdue him. Excellent use of their combined powers, they de-akumatize him, and then it's time to chat whilst Lila does her typical "I'll get you next time" monologue from her dungeon. Before we go any further, I do have to say that in hindsight, I can't help but laugh at this entire sequence, because this is one of the first times I was unironically getting steamed at one of these villains, beyond just playing along with the story. Yeah, I meme out characters like Andre the Ice Cream Man and Kim, and I can find them annoying and hateable, but I've never had a villain piss me off quite like this. This kid though, man, him and his stupid pouty lips on that punchable face with his terrible personality, screw this guy. Ladybug tries to reform him with kind words and logic, but he just keeps ranting and blaming other people, before Vesperia steps in to yell at him and tell him that he deserves it, and they should do something about him. Ladybug scolds her and tells her that this would make her no better than the masked vigilante, which gave me a good giggle, before it falls to Cat Noir to step in and give this kid the business, although I know this type of kid. They're the type of dude that's going to go all meek when a tough guy stands up to them, then go back to talking shit and throwing their weight around at people weaker than them after they're gone. Thus, this change of heart probably won't last very long. Okay, so here's my perspective. I think both are right in their own way, but perhaps they're going to extremes in their viewpoints. Maybe Vesperia should not be going full Batman and tormenting people who have moral failings but haven't really committed any crimes. If she was ruining the lives of actual violent criminals, it would be one thing and much more understandable, but ultimately, you probably shouldn't be going this far for these types of offenses. Plus, she's punishing them without telling them why, so there's no reasoning or chance to grow or learn, and so ultimately, I don't think it works. When Batman lays down his brand of justice, he also calls the police and he provides evidence of the crimes. Nothing like this was happening here. She was just punishing. That being said, I also think that Ladybug needs to find some sort of middle ground, right? After all, it's not like Vesperia was putting these people on life support. She was using her powers to mostly play pranks except for Bob Roth, but does anybody really care about Bob Roth? I just think that Ladybug probably needs to step up a little bit more. For instance, here, they just let this guy go. But this boy was harassing mothers with babies on the tram and has likely done that before, and also filmed himself cutting up his sister's diapers. His younger sister showed more maturity than he did at this moment. I feel at the very least, Ladybug should be grabbing this twerp by the ear and marching him home to tell his parents what he's doing or reporting his harassment to the authorities. Maybe she should ask his pops, why is it that I've had 2 of your kids getting akumatized in the last couple of weeks with the root cause being your neglect? Come on now. She actually rarely brings anybody to task for their behavior, no matter how vile they are, outside of a few limited moments, although I guess you could say that this is actually something that's acknowledged by the show, as ultimately it's setting her up for disaster with the cover-up for Gabe, Natalie, and Tomoe. We then finish off the episode with the reveal that Zoey jumped the gun a little bit with her actions, because it didn't stop any of the bullies at all. The thugs still came back, and so Andre revealed he had to hire a new assistant to ward them off. Is that Alia's sister? A pretty smart choice if you ask me. And then Roger gets a chance to stand up to Ray and Nelson, showing Zoey that all is right in the world today, although it's clear that her darker impulses are going to come back into play, and she's going to suit up to lay down a darker brand of justice from time to time, which in turn is going to lead her into conflict with Ladybug. We'll just have to see how that goes. This was a really fun episode that had me asking a lot of moral questions of myself. I wasn't really expecting that from a Miraculous episode, but there you go. With all that being said, these have just been my opinions, and now I'd like to hear yours. What did you think of the episode? Did you like it? Hate it? I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know.